All right, 8 o'clock is here. Welcome, everybody. We are going to review frame data today and figure out what exactly all these numbers mean right here on the main stage. So, if anything that you want to know from this lesson, you'll want to know the first three numbers, first three block of numbers in the section that says frame. It's in the very top left of this section. What these three numbers mean, you'll see there's a number in parentheses, and then a trailing number. This stands for your startup, your active, and your recovery frames on a move. So let's kind of talk about what that means. So as I execute a move, you can see the frames go up. Different moves have different starting values. So the lower the number, the faster the move is. So let's kind of dive into that a little bit further. So as you can see, this forward punch has a number of 12. So what that means is it takes 12 frames for this punch to actually animate before it hits you. So for example, if I do quarter circle back punch, you can see that it took 23 frames for that move to animate before it finally connected with the opponent. It connects with the opponent when it hits the number in between the parentheses. That number is your active frames, meaning if at any point in those two frames that move is touching the opponent, they will get hit by it. So again, a slower move like quarter circle back punch, you see that it took 23 frames for it to animate, and then it finally hit them on the first active frame. So now we know the first number is a startup number, and we know that the second number is an active frame. So the third number is your recovery frames. So what does that mean? That means that amount of frames need to pass before another move will animate. So again, quarter circle back, and you can see I hit the punch button immediately after that, but nothing came out, right? It's only until those frames finish processing will another move then begin to animate, right? You can see how the numbers count up, and then finally, I'm allowed to throw up another punch. Now, one thing to take of note as well, I'm going to make the computer guard, right? So do the move, it hits the opponent. I can then make the opponent on reaction throw a high punch. Now that's normal strike. We should make it on reaction, high punch, right? So watch the frames animate from startup to active to recovery, and then notice when he can throw a punch. Did you catch on how all the recovery frames had to process for both the opponent and for myself before he was able to throw that punch? Watch again. See, all 24 recovery frames happen before he can then throw his punch. So now that brings us over to the advantage side. If you notice, I'm just going to make him guard again. If you notice when I use this move, he wasn't guarding. Needs to start by guarding. Okay, so notice when I throw that move, I now see an advantage of +1. So what does that mean? What's going on, Blood? So +1, what does that mean? That means that I can press a button one frame earlier in the recovery than my opponent can. So essentially you take that number 24, I can shave one frame off of that, making my recovery 23. The opponent still has to recover at 24. So to show you what I mean, we'll put the reaction to strike, high punch, right? It's the same thing I'm doing with the jab. Because I recover one frame faster, my follow-up jab will beat his jab. Watch. You see that? Every time I will beat the same move he has by one frame. So what you can do with these situations where if you know that you're +1 on block, you can now use the same move that your opponent can and beat them out. And this is what is known as a frame trap, because most people think, okay, a move hit me. Typically in this game, you're at disadvantage when those moves hit you with the large library of moves. So the opponent thinks they can get away with just, hitting an attack out of that sequence. So likewise, +1 means you recover faster, and then minus means you recover slower. So let me use a different move against him. I'm just going to change the reaction so he stands there and doesn't punch me right off the bat. So, for example, forward punch is -5. So I now have to wait the full recovery of 23, and the opponent only has to process 18 frames of recovery. So now, when you think about it, if we both throw a jab, he's going to beat me. But if he throws a slower move, he now has the luxury of throwing something that is 5 frames slower but more powerful to beat out my jab. So I believe that's 15. There we go. So I'll come in with, let's see. I will actually record the computer doing this so that I can show you what I mean. So I'll have him come in with forward punch and then sweep. I'll beat him every time. Right? So let's make it so that I'm at the disadvantage. So I want, how can I make the computer retaliate with a move that is slower? Because he'll be at negative. I want him to be at positive. But do you guys get the idea so far? Okay. So let's see. Can I actually do this? So if I'm going to be the one attacking, I need to okay, I get it. All right, so comes in and then jabs, right? So that's what we're going to have him do because he's blocking, right? So guard. See, I just beat him. Every single time. Right? A 15 frame move is beating out a 10 frame move because of the disadvantage that he's at. Every single time. Right? So in that situation, you can then say, okay, I know that my opponent is at this disadvantage of -5. That means that in order for me to beat that jab, I can use anything of 15 or faster, because it's going to do more damage and win the trade, or it's just going to be faster than his jab standalone. In that situation, he's -5, right? So that means I can press buttons 5 frames sooner. So I only have to do 18 frames of recovery, and he has to do the full 23. Right? So I can hit buttons on 18 on that third number. He has to wait till 23 before he can hit a button. So you can take that ±5 in your situation, and you can use that to your advantage, saying, okay, since I know my move is a 12 frame move, if he's at -5, that's going to beat out every single option that he has. Even if he's a 9 frame jabber, I'm going to beat those options out, because you take 12, you -5 from it, you've now got a 7 frame move, essentially. So you're going to win on a trade every single time if they hit a button, because there's no move that is faster than 7 frames in this game. There's no strike faster than 7 frames. So you can set your opponent up for a frame trap for that particular situation. The next line, we have damage. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. You know, when you hit somebody with the move, you get damage. The 100% next to it means that I'm getting 100% of the move. You'll see that number change when someone is in string and I hit them again. Notice it says 50% because I've got them in a stun combo. You'll get 50% reduced damage when you're extending a stun string. So let's see. So it takes him an extra 5 frames to recover from that guard. No, he still has to process the full 23 frames. I get to press buttons on 18, if that makes sense. So regardless of what happens, all of those recovery frames need to be processed. It's the plus or minus that then modifies that third number. So if it's minus, I then have to wait the full 23, and the opponent recovers 5 frames faster than me. So they can then hit buttons on 18. If I get a plus number, that means I recover faster than the full recovery frames by however much that plus number is. Yes, compared to me, he has to wait 5 extra frames because I can press those buttons 5 frames sooner. You got it. That's right. So just take the number 23. He has to wait that full 23. Let me say it this way. If my advantage is -5, I have to wait the full 23 frames. He only has to wait 18 of those 23 because he's -5, meaning he gets to recover 5 frames faster than I do from that 23. Okay, cool. You got it. All right. So next row is damage, right? So when you hit them for the first time on normal hit, you'll see 100%, meaning I get the full damage for this strike every single time. If I extend the stun string, you'll notice the number then hits 50% because you only get half the damage when you've got them in a stun string, because in that situation, your moves are technically guaranteed. Opponent can hold out of it and everything else, but they won't have the option to block you. So that's why the damage is cut in half. The number to the right where it says combo damage, that is all additive to how much you do your combo for. So notice it's at 51. Max 88, meaning if I do more than 88 damage, it will break the critical stun and knock them down. So what does that mean? The next row where it says critical damage, right now it says 0-0, right? I hit them. Now you see, or you saw 0-28, and then it says critical. So what that means is once I hit them in neutral hit with a deep stun, they are now stuck in that stun string. I can do 28 extra points of damage to them before they get knocked down. So for example, right, keep hitting them. You can see the number going up. Sorry, I'll keep doing stuff that doesn't go into that. It's habit. So you'll see the number going up and up and up and up. And then when I exceed that number, they'll get knocked down. Right? And as I was going, you could see that number getting yellow, and then that number getting red, and then ultimately they fall down. So what you want to do is you want to develop combos that get you into a situation where you can critical burst them. You can begin to critical burst somebody once they hit yellow in the critical stun. Yellow means fair game for a critical burst because you've done enough string damage to them that you're reaching the threshold. Another way to see how far you can take your damage, take a look at their life bar when I hit them. When I keep them in a stun string, you see that little flashing gray bit? I'll do it again. See the flashing gray? The closer I get to the end of that, the closer I am to exceeding the stun threshold, and they'll get knocked down to the ground. So you can either see that visually on the life bar, or you can see that in the critical damage section. right? You'll see in some guides people saying stuff like level 1 stun threshold, level 2 stun threshold, level 3 stun threshold. So as you can see in the critical damage section, when I hit them normally, it says critical level 1. The numbers are white. Keep it going. Still level 1, numbers are white. Numbers are yellow, said critical stun level 2. If I keep going, red, level 3, critical. So these different stun thresholds will reward you in different heights that your opponent will get launched. So level 1, right? I'll see if I can just get a couple knees here. I can get 3 knees. Get level 2. Oh, it's red, sorry. But you saw how much higher we went with red. All right. Right? See how much higher we went at 2? Right? And we'll get them up to 3. Right? They get launched higher. So you can use that to create bigger juggles against opponents for more damage. The next line item is whether you're standing, crouching, or jumping. You'll see that when I jump, it'll do a little flash saying evades lows, meaning if anybody throws a low attack, I'm jumping over it, and it's going to whiff. You're also going to notice that when I do the move, it doesn't say evades low immediately. Some frames have to process before I'm airborne. Some moves are airborne instantly. Other moves take a little bit on the startup to become airborne. So you'll want to look for the moves that are instant. Jumping, evades low. You want to see that pop up immediately. And that lets you know that, okay, on the very first frame, if it says evades lows, then I'm airborne and I know I will crush a low attack. Standing, obviously standing, and crouching, it goes under highs, high throws, high strikes. Then, of course, you have your facing forward. You'll have your facing backwards. If I make the computer throw me like that, see how it says back turned? Because obviously I'm in a back turned stance, right? Then type, you have high, you have low, you have mid. It tells you if it's a strike. It tells you if it's a grab or a throw. It tells you if it's an offensive hold. And it tells you if the move is tracking. So as you can see, that move says no tracking, meaning they can sidestep. Sidestep means it's a linear attack. They can step it, they're invulnerable, and they can punish you for it. If you have a tracking move, it lets you know that it's a high punch, it was a strike, and it's tracking, meaning if they try and sidestep, they'll be caught by it. So for example, I'll have him, right? See how it catches him? But notice how when I use a non-tracking move, he's invulnerable because he steps to the side. Tracking moves will catch him every single time. To differentiate, I shouldn't have said every time because there is a difference between a high and a mid tracking move and a low tracking move too. Not many people have low tracking moves, but what that means is there are some characters like Christy, her up punch plus kick or down punch plus kick actually puts her into a crouching state. So if I were to use this high tracking move, it would whiff just as my nonlinear move did, because she's in a crouching state and crouching always gets under highs. So I would have to use his mid tracking move in order to catch that. Any questions so far on the first page? Okay, so moving on to the second page, we have another block of numbers. So what do all these things mean? So distance means how far away you are from your opponent. 3 meters, 2 meters, 1 meter, pretty much point blank. So knowing the numbers right there, that will help you understand the, actually, you know what? Let's just keep going. I'll circle back to this other thing. So distance, it's how far away you are in meters from the opponent. Right? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, belly up. Reach is how far your move actually reaches. So you'll see this jab only reaches 1.29 meters, but this forward punch reaches 217. Back P plus K is 1.88, forward punch 2.06. So what is this useful for? This is useful for when you're trying to figure out your neutral game. When you're trying to poke the opponent, keep them out, you'll look for the longer moves that outreach your opponent. The longer the reach, the better for situations. But you'll also have to keep in mind those recovery frames that we first talked about in the beginning. Because if your move has a lot of recovery frames, but it has a lot of reach, chances are the opponent can punish you in those situations. Sometimes not. So you'll have to kind of marry those two up together to figure out what your best option is. So for example, like my back forward punch, or that's 2.3. It's throw punishable. It has a lot of range to it, but the person can throw punish me. I'll talk about throw punishes and guarantees once I get through this. So, right, reach, how far your attacks go. So the next thing is height. That stands for the launch height. So if I just pop them up first, you can see I get a height of 1.51. As I was pointing out earlier, as you get someone into different stun thresholds, they go higher. So if I just hit them with a raw launcher, you can see they go for a height of 1.51. I hit them with the level 1, if I can get the knee. Notice it goes up to 1.67. Get them into the yellow state, 1.84. Get them all the way into the red, 1.94. Now we put them into a critical burst, 1.94. Okay. So 1.94 is going to be the highest height you can get someone because it's in the level 3 stun threshold. So you'll want to take a look at your juggles and see all the different heights that you can get off somebody. The greater the height, the greater juggle potential. Knockback is any move that will cause someone to get knocked backwards. So for example, this back punch plus kick has a knockback of 1 meter when I have them in counter hit or higher. So what does that mean? That means when I get a counter hit on the opponent or a high counter hit, it will knock them back 1 meter. If I do forward punch, you can see that it has no knockback properties. If I do a big move, like back forward P plus K, you can see it's got 5 meters of knockback. So 5 meters. You can see the distance that I'm standing right now from the opponent, and we're hovering right now 5 meters. That means if they have their back to a wall, an interactable, breakable, or cliff, that means I can be as far away as you see the two characters right now. That person is going to go flying into the wall, off a cliff, or whatever interactable they have. I can be that far away from them, and it will still knock them back that full extent. So the greater the knockback, the more you can take advantage of those interactables. Something very important that most people overlook. Half hit, close hit, and ground strike. So not quite sure what half hit is to this day. If someone else happens to know, let me know. Close hit is a damage multiplier. So for example, back 4 P plus K, you can see that there's a circle there that says, okay, there is a close hit multiplier on it. So that 1.5 says I have to be within 1.5 meter distance of the opponent in order to get that multiplier. So I'm 1.42. Notice in the top left, right above my head, you'll see red letters that say close hit. So that tells me I've gotten the damage multiplier. I believe a close hit is an extra 50% damage. If I look back, yeah, you can see it says 90 damage, 150% damage multiplier on it, as opposed to if I'm back here, I get 100% for 60, close hit, 150% for 90. So it's a damage multiplier. Ground strike means the attack will hit the person if they are on the ground. So if you've knocked them down to the point where you can, do a down hit where you do like hit up P plus K, or in Akira's case, down forward punch. That will be the situation where you can do this. So you'll see when I use a move that doesn't have a ground hit, it'll say nothing. If it does ground hit, you'll see that little circle. That little circle means the move will hit the opponent on the ground. You will have to use certain moves that have a damage threshold of, I think it's 20, in order to guarantee them to pop up off the ground. If your strike does less than 20 damage, it'll still hit them, but it won't force them to get up and off the ground. Zero posted here, the half hit is most common in the form of a half hit when it's angled against the wall. Okay, so he says those are considered half hits. In strikes, it is a strike that will deal less damage at max range. Gotcha. I don't know if I have any moves that can highlight that, but at least there's an explanation for you. Thank you, Zero. So we go on to the third page. This third page gets a little more involved and a little more technical. So first thing in the top left, it says follow-up interval. These are the frames in which you can buffer in moves, delay strings. Akira really doesn't have that many moves to delay. Let's see. So, okay, so it's jab, jab, right? So you can see the first one says I can use the second jab between the 12th and 22nd frame that have passed. So I could technically delay this a second punch for 10 frames and still have the string execute, right? The follow-up frame is the actual frame in which I've hit the second button. So you can see it's 21, that's 12 because I did it immediately, 18 because I delayed it for a little bit. So that should help you in understanding how much you've actually delayed it and when you've hit it. It can kind of help in your timing if you know that certain stuns give you an advantage. You can kind of learn the timing behind it to know when you can hit the next button. Critical hold interval. So in here, let's say I put them into a stun sit down. This will actually be data for the opponent. So let me switch it over to their side. Okay, so critical hold interval. Again, this is for the opponent's numbers. That lets them know that they have to wait a certain amount of frames before they can actually execute a hold. So if I put his training settings on critical hold of mid punch at fastest, right? You can see that he wasn't able to counter until 44 frames had passed. Now, those numbers can change based on whether or not an opponent is stagger escaping against you. I'll kind of dive into that in a little bit, but if you want to see what I mean by that, I will set the stagger escape of the opponent to fastest. So when they weren't staggering, he couldn't hold the mid punch until 44 frames had passed. So now that he's stagger escaped, he can hold on the 42nd frame, meaning he shaved off some time that he can actually get a hold out. The next line item is stagger escape. And when you see a circle, that means that the opponent is eligible to stagger escape out of it. I'm going to take off the critical hold because in this situation, he's holding faster than you can see it happen. See that circle? That circle means that you can stagger escape this move. Sidestep untouchable comes back to my end of the frame data. So notice how when I sidestep, it says 0 to 20. That's saying for 20 frames, I can't be touched. Right? 20 frames, I'm invincible to linear attacks, ones that are not tracking. Sidestep evade lets you know if you've successfully evaded the attack. And then the next two are the sections that everybody asks, how many frames does it take to go from standing into crouching? So let's find out. With the switch frame of standing to crouching, it takes me 4 frames to get into a crouching state if I were just to push down. It takes me 1 frame to stand back up. If I was turned around, let's get him to do that. If I just hit guard, you can see it takes me 5 frames to turn around. So what does that mean? That means you can take certain advantages from somebody, and you know that if they hold guard, it takes them 5 frames to fully switch around and hold their guard up. So I can catch them earlier in that situation where there's nothing they can do about it. So I need walls in order to show this happening. So in this particular throw, I'm +6. So that means if they turn around and hold guard, you add 5 frames to your advantage because they're busy spinning from back turned to front turned. So that would say, okay, I've got an 11 frame advantage if they just sit there and hold guard. So that in a nutshell is the move details. Does anybody have any questions before I go into what makes a move safe and what makes a move unsafe and semi-safe? I'll give you guys a second to think that one over a little bit. Okay, I'll take the lack of response as we're good. So now let's get into what makes a move safe, unsafe, and semi-safe. So in this game, a proper punish is to throw somebody when they are at a disadvantage equal or greater to the speed of your throw. So, for example, a normal throw has 5 frames of startup and connects on the 6th frame. So, knowing that, you can say, okay, a safe move when I'm fighting Akira is something that is -5 or less at a disadvantage. So -5, -4, -3, -2, -1 are all safe disadvantages. And that's because I can't grab you with a normal throw in that situation. I'll show you what I mean. Come in, jab right after it, right? Try and grab. I'm going to get struck every single time. because he's only -5. I need him to be -6 in order for that to connect. So the situation does have a little bit of an edge case, and that is when you're fighting a grappler. The grappler classes have a 4-frame startup on neutral throw. So that means if you're fighting a grappler, your safe disadvantages are -4, -3, -2, -1. Because if you're -5 and you're a grappler, you can grab that person on the 5th frame, and there's nothing that they can do to mash out faster. However, one thing to note in this game, neutral throws are breakable. So what do I mean by that? I'll make them jab and then throw. Right? So notice how I broke out of it. You break out of throws by hitting throw when the opponent has thrown you with just a neutral throw and only a neutral throw. So that brings us into semi-safe moves. Semi-safe moves are moves in this situation are -6 and 7. If you're fighting a grappler, it's so it's 5, 6, and 7 for a grappler, because they can grab you on 5, 6, and 7 because they have a 4-frame startup. Most of the cast has a startup of 5, so they can only grab you on 6 and 7 with a neutral throw. Because it's semi-safe, because you can actually break out of it, as illustrated before. Every time with the neutral throw. What makes a move unsafe is when I can do a forward throw or any throw that is 7 frames on startup. Most of the cast have a forward throw of 7 frames. I'll explain frame trapping again. So the forward throw, you can see, is 7 frames, and you cannot break out of those throws. Any command throw, forward, back, up, down, left, right, quarter circle, half circle, any input that is not just simply throw cannot be broken. So let's see. I will make the opponent, actually, you know what? I'll just do this because it's easier. I will make him do this, and I'll try and jab out of it, right? So, Remember, jab is the fastest thing I can do with Akira. All right, so I can throw him with a neutral throw. Okay, so that's not -7. I have to find something. You know what? I'll just use a move I know is unsafe, which is this move. Right there. All right, so I'll do that. Into a jab. All right, neutral throw, I can throw him. No, saw him move and I panicked. All right, so here we go. Nothing he can do. Right, because what is the disadvantage? It's for him, it's -12, meaning he can't do anything for 12 frames. He cannot do a darn thing. Right, so -12. I just have to be faster on it, right? Every single time I get a guaranteed forward throw. So that is what is known as a throw punish. Somebody is either somebody attacks you with a move that leaves them at -8 or higher of a disadvantage, because this forward throw lands on the 8th frame. So any move that is -8 or higher can be thrown with a forward throw, and you're guaranteed to get your damage. So To review, a safe move is something -5 or less. A semi-safe move is -6 or -7. Semi-safe because the opponent can neutral throw you, but you can throw break it should they do it. And then you have the guaranteed throws on unsafe moves that are -8 or higher, because almost the entire cast has a forward throw of 7 frames or back throw that is 7 frames in order to properly throw punish people. So that is essentially the end of the frame data, and I will gladly jump into the section of what makes frame positives and frame traps.